Yeah, hi, Katja. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So thank you for inviting me to today's session. I'm in a hotel room in Stirling, sort of been up here for COP for the last week. So very excited to be here. And just before I sort of delve in, I'm going to spend about 10 minutes talking. I've got a couple of slides. I just wanted to see how we go for time, if I've got time to share them. Just look at my notes. So yes, delighted to be here, and really great to see all the outcomes of all that hard work that's gone into the development of the framework. And I think the relevancy, obviously, this week in COP is a perfect place to launch this. Can I just also say thank you to the previous speakers who covered off so many amazing points in terms of reference of what landscape architecture and urban design and urban planners can offer in terms of art, heritage, playfulness, landscape science, and loved especially the point that Rory made about management and maintenance and skills shortages that's resulted in that lack of investment and lack of direction of resources to support long-term stewardship, because all those amazing schemes only look good as much as the sort of maintenance and management that sort of go alongside. So just in way of introduction, I'm Sue Morgan. I'm the CEO of the Landscape Institute, membership organisation representing landscape architects and landscape professionals. We're also a charity. I've recently joined the Landscape Institute from Design Council, and prior to that, I have about 30 years worth of experience of working in the public, private and voluntary sectors in urban renewal, FE and HE teaching, and community built environmental education in urban study centres. Recognise a number of those projects that were referenced, as particularly Southwark and Elephant. So today's panel, I was asked to speak about the need for integration and a common language in respect to the climate framework. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I see lots of parallels in this area across events, panels, and things I've been speaking about this week at COP to practitioners, NGOs, government officials, and other stakeholders. So to me, the narrative in relationship to the climate framework has been around some basic principles. The desire and will to deal with systemic issues in our practice, and dealing with climate, COVID, and credit, to work to solve, mitigate, adapt to climate change and other changes that are thrown at us, whether it's through technologies, whether it's through pandemics, to innovate, to design deeply democratically, and to learn and change our behaviours. And really to be curious, to test, to iterate, and how we work with the planet, how we design for the good of the planet, and how we work collaboratively with each other. And in the introduction to the framework, there's the things identified in relation to consistency, collaboration, and comprehensiveness, as those core themes and structures to the framework. And I would just say, on relation to consistency, the idea of this common platform for messages and information, it's absolutely key for professionals to gain access to thinking and best practice. And it'd be wonderful if other platforms can also adopt and share this multidisciplinary approach, so that we can be less siloed and outward facing. And I endorse the fact that REBA and CIC are adopting the framework. So it'd be really good also to see other research institutions funding organisations and other member organisations, as well as opening up their research vaults, I would say. And one of the things that comes to mind in relation to that is things like the research councils, for example, UKRI, Innovate UK. I know there is lots of discussion with the research councils coming together to actually fund shared common themes. And I think it's absolutely essential that, as well as practitioners and our member organisations recognising that we need collaboration, funding organisations, government departments also need to sort of recognise the holistic nature of diverse multidisciplinary working. So then just on to collaboration and integration. Yes, of course, more to multidisciplinary practice. And I do think it's very interesting over the number of, recent years of, newer multidisciplinary practices being set up with very diverse practitioners within them, looking at sort of how they can sort of really engage with working in the public sector. So really inspiring. And we need more of respecting and valuing and understanding each other and our respective disciplines. What's the full breadth of what landscape architects could do? Landscape impact assessment, soil science, public realm, urban design, rural, peri-urban, water, permaculture, etc., 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 etc. I think there's lots of need for us to understand the full extent of what our different professions do. Certainly aspects around thinking about how we can come together to think about procurement and how sub-consultants are used, best practice and respect. It's always difficult, I think, with OJO and public tendering processes. That's where a number of the best intents and quality design and good intentions of collaborative working starts to sort of creak at the seams, and we really need to do more work around that. I think also the idea of developing a more inclusive language for what we do and to speak to each other. Failings in this and how this translates on the ground can mean associated carbon cost. And also, I think, in relation to sort of language, it's very interesting how topics around place-based systems, so place-based thinking, place-based system, place-making, place-shaping, and just those words mean different things to different audiences. And I think this goes to another point of have about, assume no knowledge. The Landscape Institute are linked with the International Federation of Landscape Architects in Europe and internationally. Went to one of their congresses in Granada a couple of weeks ago, and I was quite taken by the fact that the German aspect of landscape architecture, very skilled, very experienced, yet one of their practitioners hadn't necessarily heard about natural capital accounting. And I was quite shocked by that. And they were also very keen to see how the Landscape Institute could share its best practice and its publications. But I think it's always quite interesting how when we work together and sometimes we speak to each other rather than external audiences, that sometimes we forget about acronyms, about things that we take for granted that people sort of understand. And especially important, I think, if we're going to work with communities in a much more participatory way going forward. I think the other thing that was also flagged by some of the previous speakers about skills and competencies, in order for us to work really well together, we need to reference that we are facing skills shortages, particularly in relation to landscape architecture. There's a lack of graduates coming through. There's a reduction in the academic institutions offering courses and training facilities to carry out landscape professional courses. And that's a huge issue in relation to key skills needing to tackle climate change, complex issues. And some of those things don't necessarily transfer well to some of the other professions. We're also, a number of our registered practices are facing issues around, losing students or practitioners that go back to their country of origin rather than staying in the UK. And clearly we all have to deal with ED&I issues around our lack of diversity and opportunity for people to come into the profession. So from that perspective, I just wanted to share with you a few aspects about what we're doing at the LI. As mentioned, Mina mentioned in her film around entry standards and competency frameworks. So LI, we've been working on our entry standards framework to take into consideration climate change and sustainability. So we feel that we're kind of addressing some of those things. Day to day, our business planning and our work that we do as a team relates to urban UN sustainability goals. We also are mandating a minimum of CPD training to our members on these topics. And I think also in relation to our skills, we're working really hard to get apprentices into the workplace and to academic institutions. It's a bit of chicken and egg there in terms of supply and demand. And certainly I would see this framework as being a really good mechanism to support the need for green skills and some investment behind getting new generations into our professions. And we'll be relaunching our Pathway to Chartership and the Experienced Professional route later this year. So if I've got time, have I got time, Katja, to share a couple of slides, or do you want me to finish?
Well, can you do it in 2 minutes?
No, I can't. So what I'll do, I've put 2 links to some documents that we have in the chat. If I can just, I'll share those. One is landscape, our landscape journal, which talks about multidisciplinary approaches to responding to COP. And the other link I'll put in is our Landscape 2030 documents, which has a number of case studies which I was going to reference in slides, and I'll make sure that Katja gets a copy of the slides so she can pass those on to anybody that's interested.
Brilliant, thank you. And if we have time at the end, we can always kind of come back to that.